Wow, TNA. Really? And I thought last week's show was bad. Hey, what's up and how's it going, everyone? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to spend with me right here today on the Mick Rock and Bolt Wrestling Review Show. I'm your co-host, Mike McRock Wilson, and we just saw TNA Impact Wrestling presenting their free pay-per-view event on TV, Genesis. And this is part 1. Part 2 is next week. There's going to be 2 parts of this free show that they're airing on TV that's supposed to be a pay-per-view. But moving on. Overall, I thought this show was, again, not a great show based on what happened last week. And it really showed this week. There are a lot of negative things that happened on the show, but there's also some positive things that I did like about the show. And one of them is Rockstar Spud and how the show kicked off with him in the ring. And I really liked that moment where he said, "Can I have some decorum, please?" It kind of reminded me of someone else. I wonder who that is. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. But anyway, I really like when Rockstar Spud is in the ring. He has this interesting charisma about him, and it shows on screen. And he basically introduced the boss of TNA, Dixie Carter, and she came out and talked about last week's train wreck that happened when 20 guys interfered in the main event that cost AJ the match. And I don't know if it's something that has to do backstage, if it had to do with AJ's contract not negotiating and some people got upset over it. Maybe that's the case. I don't really know. But the way I see it in the storyline perspective, you don't want your championship match turned into a train wreck, and that's what happened last week. What happened was that she also introduced Magnus, and there's a lot of introducing on TV these days, and there's kind of too much of introducing a lot of people. I wish they would just come out at any time and not have to be introduced by someone. I think there's like a little bit too much of that, I think, in my opinion. It's just a nitpicky issue. Come on, don't shoot the messenger, will ya? Yeah, but anyway, after that, of course, Magnus came out and cut his promo. I thought, his mic skills are pretty good. Dixie, as painful as she is, you know what? She really needs to work on her acting. And while she was talking, I found myself more entertained by Rockstar Spud's antics behind her. And when Magnus cut his promo, I thought he was actually pretty good while he's talking. He actually talks like a champion. He has the suits. He has the title. I was interested when he had the 2 titles. I didn't know what he was going to do with the both of them. And what he did was he gave one to Dixie Carter. It says, and he told Dixie that you're the champion. And basically, she really is. This is all about Dixie Carter reigning supreme on her company, and really she's the champion, and Magnus is just a lackey like Rockstar Spud is. Even EC3 as well. So that's another issue I have. After that, Dixie introduced all the people that were involved, and guys like Bad Influence, the Bromance, Zima Ion, Bobby Roode, even Lady Tapa and Gail Kim that were involved in the whole grand scheme of things with the power trip that Dixie's on. And what happened was that Dixie Carter said that this is the genesis of the Dixie Carter regime, and surprise, surprise, TNA cannot last at least 6 months without a new group being formed. no surprise there. And what happened was after that was that Sting interrupted the party. I'm surprised that he, when the lights went out, he never attacked everyone, you know, that were all in the ring. I can understand that, because what happened was that Sting cut a promo and said that said that Magnus is nothing more than a paper champion. He says he had a few choice words about Dixie Carter as well as Magnus and EC3, and after that the good guys came out, and it was basically an all-out war between all these 12 guys, and then they make the match after 6-on-6. And basically what this was another train wreck of a match. I thought this match was all over the place. There were too many things going on inside the ring and outside the ring, where the two guys would come in, they would leave, and another two guys would come in and leave, and another two guys would come in the ring and leave, so on and so on. There was absolutely nothing out of the ordinary that happened, but there was one thing that I did like about that whole schmozzle as the show started, was that Joseph Park, when he turned into Abyss, he attacked Bad Influence, and as he was in intense mode, in Abyss mode, you saw James Storm and Gunner kind of doing a pre-celebration. They turn around and they get double clothesline by Abyss. I liked that moment. It was intriguing to me, because this is some sort of small sign of Abyss transforming back to himself as the monster that he should be. And hopefully TNA will go along with this, and we'll see what happens in the weeks to come. Maybe something will happen next week with Joseph Park and with this whole Abyss thing. And it's funny, because as much as I like the Joseph Park character, it kind of went way too long, and I think now it's time for him to form back into the monster Abyss full time. That's what I think should happen, in my opinion. After all that schmozzle happened, we saw Kurt Angle throughout backstage looking for Dixie Carter, and we saw him come up to guys that told him no, we can't find her. He meets Al Snow at a catering or at a lunch table or something, and he has that intensity, and he's playing off his emotions, takes it on Al Snow and says, "Where's Dixie Carter?" And he flips over the tables and stuff, etc., etc. He has Al Snow by his collar, and shortly after that, he got his answer from Al Snow. He goes to the ring, and he wanted answers from Dixie Carter and why she used his family to get him out of the building. So, it's getting really personal now. I like when TNA does stuff that gets personal. It feels real sometimes, and I don't get that with the WWE, because the WWE was to put on a show. When it comes to TNA Impact, they actually make things look pretty real. It has that realistic factor to it. I like that. But what I didn't like was the dialogue between Dixie Carter and Kurt Angle. I have some major issues about it. For one, Dixie Carter's acting. Like I said at the beginning of the show, torture. I'd rather hear nails on the chalkboard than listen to her speak. That's how bad her acting is. And this was no different. It was a little better, but still, come on. You need to improve on your acting, Dixie Carter. It's not that hard. And basically what all this was that it was Kurt Angle wanting answers from Dixie Carter. And Dixie's rebuttal is that she wants to protect Kurt Angle from himself and his family, other stuff, etc., etc. To me, in a storyline perspective, didn't make sense what Dixie Carter was saying. Kurt Angle had a more better, believable approach to the storyline, and it was just a one-sided dialogue that fell flat in the storyline perspective. And it was one-sided good, it was one-sided bad. And shortly after that, Angle mentioned that Dixie Carter is on a power trip and says that he'll be in Sting's corner in his match to make sure nothing happens. And of course, I saw this coming from a mile away. Dixie Carter refuses for that to allow that to happen and escorts Kurt Angle from the building, tries to get security, and Bobby Roode attacks Angle from behind and gives him the Roode bomb, as the announcers call it, but it really doesn't look like a bomb, like a power bomb or anything like that. It's a neckbreaker, a modified neckbreaker. I would rather be called it the Roode neckbreaker. I know I'm getting technical, but that's just my opinion about that part of the show. But overall, I thought that interesting dialogue scene was not all that interesting. I take that back. And yeah, that was not a great part of the show, not at all. Like I said, there were a lot of negative things that happened on the show. Case in point, the whole thing with Chris Sabin, Velvet Sky, and Austin Aries. I mean, since when is the X Division Championship revolved around a storyline between a boyfriend and a girlfriend? Seriously, that really drops the importance of the X Division Championship. What happened throughout this thing was that Chris Sabin was questioning about Velvet Sky's, about talking to Austin Aries. Maybe there's something going on between the two of them. And Austin Aries came out and he called Chris Sabin the worst boyfriend that ever lived. And this is pretty much Austin Aries poking fun at Chris Sabin, mentioning how he's not that great of a boyfriend, how he uses Velvet Sky to his advantage, and he uses her as well to win matches. And they're really planting the seeds of the relationship between Velvet Sky and Chris Sabin. I doubt it's going to go anywhere because I see something coming from a mile away that Velvet Sky... hang on. Before I get to that, I will mention some other things that happened. This is basically planting the seeds of doubt between Velvet Sky and Chris Sabin. And then they make a match. And the stipulation is that Velvet Sky will be locked in a cage to make sure that she doesn't interfere in the match between Chris Sabin and Austin Aries next week for the X Division Championship. And like I said, I see this coming from even a million miles away. I don't think there's anything going to happen between Chris Sabin and Velvet Sky. What is going to happen, I think, is that Velvet Sky is going to turn heel and still be with Chris Sabin. Because when Austin Aries and Chris Sabin were talking to each other throughout that dialogue scene, Velvet Sky kind of interrupted the both of them and got on the microphone, and she was acting though as if she was a little bit heelish, and that's a little sign of that to come in that match next week. I think that's what's going to happen, and I'm going to stick to it. Also on the show, we saw a little short skit with Samuel Shaw backstage. Now, before he even appeared, we saw this guy. We don't know who he is, talking to someone off camera. He sees Samuel Shaw walking across the room. He approaches him, talks about how great his match was, and then he went to the topic of Christy Hemme and about how hot she is, and then Samuel Shaw attacked him, and then he he was throwing punches at him, and here I'm thinking, whoa, that looks a little fake, really fake, I think, in my opinion. And then he grabs his shoe, smells inside it, and then just whacks him with it. And I really like how Samuel Shaw was doing it, even though it looked really fake. I liked his approach in that backstage segment. It really comes across as this real psycho that you just don't want to meet in a dark alley or any light alley for that matter. And it's a great character to have. It's something cool, it's something new, it's something fresh. And we'll see where this goes with Samuel Shaw, and I'm actually looking forward how this character develops. Maybe it's not going to be as one-dimensional as we think it might be, and we could see some sort of twist in his character, become this Dexter where he targets only villains and becomes this anti-hero. We haven't seen it yet because it's too early for that. So this is something, to consider when you're evolving this character. Moving on, we saw another backstage segment where Magnus meets EC3 backstage. EC3 is trying to motivate himself in the mirror. Magnus comes in and he plants a seed of doubt on EC3 and says, I don't know if you can beat Sting, and stuff like that. And we know it's coming from a mile away that there's going to be a screw job. So overall, I don't know about that. Moving on, Bully Ray versus Mr. Anderson in a no disqualification match. What can possibly go wrong? Right? Well, see, I thought this match was a hit and miss in my opinion. There were a couple of botchy moments in the beginning, but there was also some good moments as the match progressed. There was that moment where Mr. Anderson done the rolling senton onto to Bully Ray onto the table that was in the corner. I thought that was a good spot. There were a couple of good spots in that match where they used the guardrail. And really overall, this match felt more like a street fight or a hardcore match, more than a no disqualification match. Usually in a no disqualification match, there's less objects involved. And when it comes to a hardcore match or a street fight, there's more weapons, being involved. Like the steel chair. The steel chair was involved. The table was involved. The guardrail. And so was the fire liquid as well. What happened was that Bully Ray was about to use it. Mr. Anderson caught him. He put the liquid onto a table. And then Anderson caught him, low blowed him, and pile drived him, and pinned him 1, 2, 3. I like how they teased putting the table on fire, and not to the fullest. I like it, and it shows that this rivalry is going to continue. And here's the thing about that. I'm not a fan of this rivalry continuing, because this should have ended when Mr. Anderson took out the aces and eights once and for all. That's where it should have ended. Bully Ray should have been off TV for at least a couple of months and have him come back as this developed new character that he is now. And that's what I think should have happened, because we see too much of Bully Ray. Move on. It's not that hard. Put Anderson in the TNA World Title picture, because I think he deserves it a whole bunch for what he has done in TNA. And if he doesn't get a title shot anytime soon, I will riot. Moving on. We have the Gail Kim versus Madison Rayne for the Knockouts Championship. And this match, I don't think, was all that great at all. It was very one-sided. And what happened was that before the match, Gail Kim attacked Madison Rayne from behind, and stuff happened in the ring. It was an okay wrestling match. The issue I have is that why am I supposed to care about this match? That's the big issue. Since when does a former knockout who has been champion before gets another title shot when they've already been there, done that? Why is it that TNA is bringing back old knockouts instead of new ones to help the knockouts division to grow? Why is TNA giving us a match where we're supposed to be invested in and it does not work? Why does TNA put Madison Rayne as a babyface and we're supposed to care about it? Why is TNA giving Gail, Kim, and Madison Rayne a one-on-one match when their last one-on-one confrontation a few years ago was a fail? And those are questions that TNA really needs to answer. And the Knockouts division has not been the same since, and it should be reformed with new people. Moving on. Now, remember when I said there were some good things that happened on TNA? One of them I really liked. And it was the announcement that the American Wolves, Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, signed a contract with TNA this morning. There was a backstage segment with the two of them and Dixie Carter. And for the love of God, Eddie Edwards can't even keep a straight face. I don't blame him, because I got a feeling there's someone great behind it, and he's probably smiling about it. What happened was that they signed a contract this morning when Dixie Carter said, "You're going to have a tryout match to get a contract." But then Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards said, "We already signed Dixie." And she's like, "What? Really? What? From who?" "Well, there's this new investor." She looks at the contract. And I'm wondering who it is, right? And I wouldn't be surprised one bit. And actually, I hope it's Jim Cornette, because he is a big mark for the American Wolves. And by God, I hope it's Jim Cornette that is the new investor for TNA. I would mark out 100% if it is Jim Cornette. That would make great television. He's a great shooter. If you haven't seen his YouTube videos where he talks about topics related to wrestling, TNA, WWE, Ring of Honor, anything when it comes to professional wrestling, he goes directly to the point. I would love to see Jim Cornette be the new investor in TNA Impact Wrestling. And the main event on the show was Ethan Carter III versus the Icon Sting. What happened was that backstage, Earl Hebner wanted to go out and be the ref for this match, and Dixie Carter refused that to happen. And the special guest referee was Rockstar Spud, and I think the greatest highlight of this show had to be that short little guy. When he came out in the ref t-shirt with the blue bow tie, looking absolutely ridiculous and funny as hell in the same time, and I'm loving every second of Rockstar Spud. Absolutely no question about it. And what happened was that this is one of those matches where it was predictable as hell. There was more shenanigans and antics than wrestling. And that's what I enjoyed about this match. This was actually a good way to end the show, I think, in my opinion. What happened was that, Sting was playing around with the referee. He had him up on his back, and he was giving the boot to Ethan Carter, using him as a weapon. forcing Rockstar Spud to make the 3 count when Sting had EC3 pinned. I loved the antics in that match when it came to Rockstar Spud and how he bounced back and forth with Sting and Ethan Carter III. I loved it. It was great. And even when Sting applied his finishing maneuver, I'm actually surprised that Sting actually applied it properly, because Sting sometimes can't even apply his own finishing maneuver right because of his issues with his back. And so I thought, for that reason, and for the reasons of shenanigans and antics, this was a great way to end the show. What happened was that Ethan Carter III won the match. No surprise there, because Magnus came out with a suit, with the ref t-shirt underneath it, and came in the ring with the quick victory 3 count when Ethan Carter III pulled him up for a schoolboy. After that, Sting got on the microphone, cut a promo, and was really telling Magnus off again about why he turned heel. Why, Magnus? Why did you turn heel? Why did you turn on me? Why did you do what you did when you won the World Heavyweight Championship? You slept in the face of Jeff Hardy. You slept in the face of me, Sting, and other people in TNA that actually are the good guys. And I really like, those kind of things where people play off who they were. Like when Kurt Angle was talking to Dixie Carter about who she was 7 years ago. The same thing with Sting and Magnus as well. Who were you when, Sting mentioned, I took you under my wing when we reformed the Main Event Mafia, and then you do this to me? Why? I love those things about TNA when they play on those emotions. Absolutely incredible. And what happened after that was that Sting basically told Magnus off. He called him a cancer, he called him paper champion, etc., etc. And he challenges Magnus as well for one more match. And Magnus comes back and says, I don't owe you anything, Sting. And basically Sting says, if you want to earn the title, face me. And he was trying to sucker in Magnus to make the match happen. And Magnus came back and says, I'm not falling for your antics. And also mentioned about Sting's contract as well, and how he has to sign every year, and his contract is almost up, etc., 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 and makes the challenge. Next week at Genesis, Magnus challenges Sting for a World Heavyweight Championship match, and if Sting wins, he wins the world title. But if Sting loses, Magnus will shred Sting's contract and he will work no more in TNA. That would be absolutely amazing to see. You know why? Because I always wanted to see that match that the diehard fans want to see at WrestleMania, Undertaker versus Sting. No question. Have Sting written up on TNA so he can work with The Undertaker for WrestleMania. I will mark out for 1,000,000 years if that happens. Absolutely, I would. And with that being said, I think, in my opinion, because there's so many new talents on TNA like Rockstar Spud, Magnus, Ethan Carter III, and other people in the like as well, like the Bromans and Lady Tapa, and having these other superstars that are going to help them along the ride. And with that being said, sometimes you need to get rid of some people that are not, that are the older guys, like Kurt Angle, like Jeff Hardy, even though he'll be coming back, like Sting. I think that, I don't know if this is going to be a train wreck. I'm not, going to play the what if game, but I will say that I see this coming from a million miles away, and that Sting wins, and Magnus wins, and Sting is written off TNA. What do you think is going to happen next week? Part 2 at Genesis on TNA Impact Wrestling. Comment below and let me know. And that was my review of that very show. And while you're at it, you can also follow MRB Wrestling Reviews on Twitter. Subscribe to us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube and like us on Facebook. I got that mixed up again, for the love of God. What am I doing? I'm drunk. I gotta go to bed. And to all your viewers watching, get plenty of rest and always do your best.